We're at the very front end, the very tip of the iceberg at what Doge is exposing. What we're finding is that the government is, I would say, made up of primarily illegal funding. Our government, I don't know about illegal even, but immoral, I'll say. And I'll make my case in just a minute. Welcome to the Doug TenNapel channel. We've got Tim Burchett. We've got some great exposing of your government, mostly Democrat, some Republicans also. But imagine your tax dollars, okay? $2 trillion a year is the budget. 1 trillion of it we already know is going to pay interest. So that's already being thrown down the hole based on the lies of the last 40 years of government just borrowing money that we couldn't afford. And now we're paying interest on it. So that's already half of your budget is a grift. It's not even going to pay for a cop or to pay for security or to pay for welfare. Half of your tax dollars thrown in a hole just to pay interest on $2 trillion a year. Now that leaves us to a $1 trillion money being spent by our government, which allegedly we've found waste, fraud, and abuse. Elon Musk thinks we can find about half of the government waste, fraud, and abuse, which doesn't surprise me because not only are we funding American waste, fraud, and abuse, we're funding waste, fraud, and abuse around the world to countries that can't even survive in the free market. We're paying them money, your tax dollars. That leaves about 1/4 of our tax dollars of what we paid being remotely fiscally plausible, fiscally moral. 1/4 of the taxes you pay are actually going to American citizens and our needs. And even then, I have my suspicions. So I'm guessing, we're about 75% fraud. Let's take a look at Tim Burchett on some heads are going to roll when all this stuff gets exposed because he knows something this CNN reporter does not.
These are people, currently, I think these are people who actually are interested in reducing some of these estimates. They are people who are interested in being fiscally conservative.
Then why don't they embrace the idea of exposing these things? Why do they want to demonize Trump and they want to demonize Elon Musk? It's ridiculous.
No, they don't. I'm just talking about no, they're not. I'm just talking about
every day. Have you all ever had any in the last
folks, I don't know 3 weeks
an article on?
I'm talking about the math on waste, fraud, and abuse.
Well, look at the math. If Elon Musk says that he thinks he can find $1 trillion worth of waste, abuse, and fraud, why don't we let him try to see if he can find it? What does that?
I like how Tim Burchett is calling her out using clarity. He didn't finish his sentence. She wouldn't let him because she was too busy promoting the Democrat talking points. But number one, he said, why haven't you in the last 3 weeks had one positive Elon Musk story? Why hasn't CNN, if it's both sides and they're just reporting the news, even if you're going to report 2 different opinions on something, they've only given you one opinion, and that's anti-Elon Musk, anti-Doge, that is anti-government oversight, anti-looking for waste, fraud, and abuse. So this is opinion news. Even if you'll admit that, is it possible that this could work? This thing that Elon Musk is doing could indeed work. He could indeed be exposing fraud, but CNN will not report on it. Therefore, they learned nothing from the election. Their ratings are down, and it's good that they're down because they're lying to you. And Tim Burchett just now was trying to help CNN. If they would listen to him, they might have saved their network because of him, but they won't. They're going to screw it into the ground instead. That's why haven't they had a single positive story on Elon Musk? The second thing that she said was, lots of us are for stopping waste, fraud, and abuse. That's another talking point of the Democrats. We're not pro waste, fraud, and abuse. We're against it, inward only. And the right is responding by saying they're against waste, fraud, and abuse until they actually find it. And then they'll do everything they can to cover up for it and support it. So that's fair to say that when a Democrat says they're against waste, fraud, and abuse, it is in word only. They cannot give a clear example of one thing that they actually support reforming. So they're trying to protect a giant corrupt system, which Tim Burchett is saying it's going to come back and expose that the government is paying things out and they're getting money back to the actual congressmen and senators who are sold out. And all these administrators are a giant grift that we're paying for. And some heads are going to roll. They're going to go to prison. It's going to take a while, guys. It's probably going to take 2 years for all this stuff to be uncovered.
That hurt. You know, everybody's trying to be critical. They're attacking the message carrier. And you know, the problem is that this money, you're going to see it going to politicians, and going out to these NGOs and all these organizations that they claim they're doing a good job, and it's coming right back to Washington and possibly both parties.
She's not listening. Look at her. She's looking down at her notes and reading her next argument while he's talking. So she's not going to respond to this information. I'm going to rewind it a little bit to get back to when she looks down. There she is looking up at him. And then we're going to go back to her. Look how long she looks down to read her next argument before he even finishes his statement.
And going out to these NGOs and all these organizations that they claim they're doing a good job, and it's coming right back to Washington and possibly both parties. And I think that's what a lot of these people are afraid of. They're going to get caught with their hand in the cookie jar. And some of these people need to be in handcuffs, because Medicaid and Medicare should be a sacred group of people, and we should not be stealing from any group that is trying to help that community. And that is what has happened.
So that's in defense of Medicaid and Medicare, because remember, you've seen Jasmine Crockett, you've seen Nancy Pelosi, you've seen Hakeem Jeffries claim in public that Trump is trying to cut Medicaid and Medicare. Do you think that's part of his agenda? Of course not. So they're using that as a cover to scare retired people and people getting Medicaid and Medicare, and hoping that they can cause, I think they want a violent insurrection against our government. Now, here's the next one. This one is a new journalist. This is on the money laundering exposed. People are going to prison. Someone is going to prison.
Read the entire thing. Her next project could be even bigger, investigating and exposing what she believes are corrupt politicians and judges. She posted this weekend, "Still working on the People Connection mega project. This will be my first truly financially high-cost initiative, so I need to get it just right."
So my project right now is to work on analyzing connections and relationships between people in the government. Because if you research people long enough, you start to notice that they're all working together. They're all married. They're all in-laws. They know each other. They all sit on the same board for many years. And that's my project, to map those relationships and put it on my website.
She says Democrats and Republicans are both to blame.
I cannot tell you enough how much both are involved. It is everywhere. Now we even have members of Congress. So we have sitting members of Congress that actually sit on the NGOs right now. They vote in Congress for money for themselves, and they sit on the same NGOs that they're voting to get money. It is a huge conflict of interest, and it's buried very deep. The numbers don't lie. This is not a partisan issue. And if the American people understood completely what we're finding, there would be outrage across the board.
So they're afraid of what you're going to find. I'm going to cut that interview off. I love her. She's deaf, but she's an investigative reporter. And what they're going to expose, because I've heard Tim Burchett now say, it's bigger than you think. And that's not hyperbole. He's just clearly scared of what they're uncovering with the size of the corruption in our current government for both sides. Okay. You'd be scared because you're exposing your own side too. Number two, Clay Higgins. We've been showing his clips also. He always pauses and he goes, guys, it's bigger than you think and it's more corrupt than you think. So these are people who are in the know. Who is not in the know? Thomas Massie and Ron Paul and the Libertarians. They're fighting Trump, wanting to keep the government open so he can expose this grift. Now, these guys are principled, I believe. Ron Paul and Thomas Massie, they have a bad strategy. You can be principled and have bad strategy all the time. You see it in the pro-life movement. You might see it in other family movements. It is not the time to shut the Trump administration down. It is the time to put them on steroids. So you're going to pass this terrible CR. You have to keep the government running for 6 months, because something much bigger, the corruption is much bigger. And who's joining the Democrats to try to hide it, to try and cover it up. I know that Rand Paul and I know that Thomas Massie don't want to cover up, but that's what your vote is doing when you don't vote for the president's CR bill. I'm Doug in exile.